Welcome back to TAD Talks, where every week I sit down with my dad and sustainability expert, Tad Radzinski, to ask him questions about sustainability topics. Last week, we talked about embodied carbon and why it is important. We also touched on how companies can reduce the embodied carbon in their products. If you haven't seen that yet, you can watch that on Tad's YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk more about sustainability goals, what they are, what they mean, and how companies set them. So, as usual, we're going to start off with the basics and ask Tad, what are sustainability goals and how do companies set them?
Yeah, so just like, a lot of us set goals in our lives and we say, I'm going to exercise every day, or I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to, eat less, lose weight, those are all goals, right? So what companies are going to do, the correct way to do it for setting sustainability goals, a company would definitely do something what's called a materiality assessment. So think about it, every company is different and every company has different customers, they do different things, whether they're providing products or services or that kind of thing. So when a company does this materiality assessment, what they want to do is take a look at what is important to them as a company. So they're going to go back to our Sustainability 101 when we talked about the triple bottom line, when you're looking at in economic performance, environmental performance, social performance, people, planet, profit, that kind of thing. The company is going to definitely look at that and they're going to say, all right, what are we in business to do and how do we want to continue to do that? And then they also want to understand what are their impacts, what are they doing to the environment, also how do they impact and connect to society as a whole. So what a company will do is they'll run through that analysis, the materiality assessment. It's a series of steps of analyzing, doing an assessment of where you are, baselining, benchmarking, trying to understand, what is your carbon footprint, what is your water use, how much money do you donate to, philanthropic organizations, how much volunteer hours do you do, how much do you do around, employee training, education, safety, all these different things. And then obviously economic performance is something they'll look at. They'll want to understand what can they be doing, do they want to drive higher revenue, do they want to increase sales, do they want to get better shareholder value, different things like that. So all of those things get evaluated in that materiality assessment. And then the next important step of that is to understand where you are as a company and get good data and benchmark and baseline so you can actually make real goals based on reality and science. And then the other thing they should be doing is understanding what their customers care about or their key stakeholders. Like, if it's a company manufacturing something, obviously they want to sell more of the product, so they want to hear what does the customer care about, what's that voice of customer. Now, if they're a service provider, they might want to understand, what do their customers care about? Is it better customer service? Is it, what are the different aspects that are really important? So when you do that, it's kind of like a balancing act. You create a graph then and you say, all right, what's important to us? And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll get input from their stakeholders through surveys, interviews, research. You always look at your competitors to see what they're doing in these areas as well. And then you create a graph and you basically say, all right, here's all the things that are important to us, and here's the things that came up into this upper quadrant that were important to our stakeholders or our customers, and then you try to set your goals around those different targets. So, we see a lot of companies that are setting goals right now to be carbon neutral, or they're setting goals to reduce water consumption. Many companies make commitments to be zero waste to landfill. On the environmental side, we're talking. You'll also see companies that on the social side might be thinking about how does their product benefit society and what can they do to reduce those impacts and still provide a good benefit to society, or what can they do more to support the local community, or provide more jobs to people. That would be on the social side. And then on the economic side, they'll obviously set goals, maybe 3-year target, 5-year target, whatever. And a lot of times these get set out anywhere from 3 to 5 years, these goals. And some companies do some things where they're going to line up with what is called the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are like overarching goals of how we are going to keep society sustainable. So a lot of times you'll see companies linked to those as well.
Okay, awesome. So I have heard of a lot of companies setting 2030 and 2050 sustainability goals, and these seem very far far away. Why would it take that long for these companies to achieve those goals?
Yeah, so some of the companies that are setting like a 2030 or 2050 goal, it could be a multitude of things. Oftentimes, if you see those goals, it's usually they say they're going to be carbon neutral or net zero by 2050 or 2030. And that's a really hard thing to do. So it's not like you're magically going to do it. It's going to take time and planning, and you got to actually wait for technology to catch up. So if you're going to set a carbon neutrality goal, and let's say you're looking at your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, if you remember we talked about those in previous TAD talks, that would be your electricity use, your fuel use, that kind of thing, and you want to become carbon neutral for those, then what you have to do is you have to really, to do it right, you have to understand where you are, baseline, benchmark, do your sustainable operations assessments, figure out how you're going to reduce energy usage in your operations, in your vehicles, and all that kind of thing, and then make some decisions there. And then for the emissions and the energy usage you can't reduce, you're going to have to buy renewable energy credits or carbon offsets, to meet those things. So a company needs a lot of time to plan that, and usually they're going to have to replace equipment, they're going to have to redo things in their factories, and that requires investment, like capital. So they definitely want to have a longer time horizon to do that analysis, to decide what equipment they're going to replace, what they're going to do differently, maybe change processes, maybe buy a whole electric fleet eventually instead of gas fire, gas fueled, whatever, and they want to plan that out. So that's why they're going to have those longer range goals, and it's important that they have the time to do that. So that's basically why you see the longer range ones now. And the good thing is we're seeing technology catch up. We're seeing advances in renewable energy systems. We're seeing improved efficiency in various equipment. We're eventually switching to electric vehicles. That technology is coming along. So I think we're going to have some good technology coming along over time as well, which will help them meet these goals.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I also know that a lot of companies set 2020 sustainability goals and did not appear to meet those. Why did this happen?
Yeah, we have a lot of companies we actually work with that did that. And one thing they did is they made the mistake of saying, 2020, we're going to make a 20% reduction in everything. Mm-hmm. So we're going to reduce energy usage by 20%, carbon footprint by 20%, water use 20%. Oh, and by the way, we're going to be zero waste to landfill, or something like that. And what happened was they didn't set those goals with good data. They basically just pulled them out of the air, and they weren't science-based, and they weren't done based on evaluating their operations to determine what can we actually really achieve this. We actually just worked with a company that had made those commitments actually to one of their biggest customers. Mm-hmm. And that customer is expecting a report, here we are December 4th, right? By the end of this year, which is very close, they have to report out how they did. And we were able to help them achieve a more significant reduction in water. We got them to like 70 to 90% reduction in water. We did some great stuff there. On the energy side, though, we identified about 16 to 17% energy reduction opportunities that they could do, without having to go major capital investment. So they still have to implement that, mm-hmm. right? So, and then on the waste side, we do have a plan set up for them to meet their zero waste to landfill goals, but that's going to take time as well. So anyway, the key to this is if you're going to set goals, number one, you got to make them science and data-based. Make sure you understand what you can achieve, where you are, and then set your baseline, and then go forward from there. And then what you have to do is allow enough time to be able to meet the goal, because they still have to make the products or provide the service and do everything else and try to meet these goals. So it's definitely something where doing a materiality assessment and doing proper benchmarking, baselining, and data analysis should help them minimize that risk in the future. And understand too, many times people set sustainability goals, and sometimes they make them stretch goals, and they know maybe they can't achieve it, but they're going to set it anyway. And it's okay, I think, to adjust goals, and it's okay to see some changes, because in sustainability you're always kind of evolving and developing your plan as you go. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's important to be flexible, and I do think a lot of companies, when they set the 2020 sustainability goals, were just like, oh, this sounds good, we'll just we'll go for that.
Right.
And then they realized they couldn't.
20, right?
Yeah. And
let's
then
just do that.
they realized that they couldn't meet those goals based on their organization and their supply chain and everything. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and please let us know in the comments what you would like to hear about in a future TAD Talk. We are taking suggestions. So yeah, thank you all for listening.